Hi everyone, and thanks for looking into my presentation. My initial intention with this research was to provide a possible explanation for the decline of the native spotted frog, the Rana luteventris, in Swan Lake, Montana, which is pictured on the slide. And these pictures are from my yard, and I grew up catching the spotted frogs, but it wasn't until several years ago that myself, my parents, and some of our nearby neighbors noticed that we hadn't seen any of the frogs, and they used to be everywhere. And this realization happened about the same time when there was a lot of controversy on the lake about a potential condominium development which would add significant water traffic and also possible water quality issues. And in 2010, the local conservation group, the Swan Lakers, began a study on the water quality of Swan Lake, which ends this year in 2014. So I wanted to look specifically at Swan Lake for my study, but as there hasn't been any specific research done on spotted frog population in the lake before, and they've seemingly disappeared, I broadened the research to encompass a frog population collection throughout the greater Flathead Valley with the hopes of applying data on frog populations and the possible declines in the valley to the current research being done on water quality on Swan Lake as a potential explanation for the frog population declines. And Flathead Valley is located in the northwest corner of the state. As you'll see, it's just southwest of Glacier National Park in that red circle. And this is a closer look at it. So I've drawn that black line to show about where the mountain ranges are. And you'll see that Swan Lake is that small, sort of long, slender lake on the east side of the valley. And this is an even closer look of the lake. And I live about where that red dot is. And if you look at the bottom of the slide, right here at the bottom of the lake, you'll notice that it's a lighter shade of green as it's a marshy wildlife refuge. And the upper portion of the Swan River, which is right about here, flows into the lake, and then at the north end of the lake, the lower portion of Swan River flows out and then over into Flathead Lake, which is over in the west part of the valley. And as you'll see, just based on the flow of the rivers, the Swan Lake is a very nutrient-rich lake. There's a lot going on in it, but because of this, because of its size, the popularity of the lake, there's a lot of areas where you can get access to the lake, a lot of private property. It's a very recreationally popular lake. And the recreational popularity of Swan Lake is what has brought a lot of attention to possible water quality issues. And this is just a quick example of what the Swan Lakers, the organization I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, are doing. And the organization primarily served to combat development at the north end of the lake, which is shown in this article by the Flathead Beacon, but it's since done a lot of research on the water quality of the lake. And the Swan Lake Water Quality Investigation 2012 Summary Report, which documents water quality on Swan Lake in 2012, looked at endangered species populations such as the bull trout, but didn't address spotted frogs. And the spotted frog, or Rana luteventris, is native and common to the northwest United States and western Canada. However, there has been some research about spotted frog declines in other western states, and it is even considered endangered in some regions, especially in Oregon. And amphibians are very environmentally sensitive, and there's been a wide range of research addressing spotted frog declines due to cattle grazing in their habitat, presence of heavy metals, and variations in habitat pH levels. So there are a lot of different factors which can affect population size and declines. And currently the research in western Montana on amphibian populations is concentrated in the Bitterroot National Forest, which is this red circle over here, and in Glacier National Park, which is the uppermost red circle. And while the research in Glacier is concentrating on boreal toad populations, the research in the Bitterroot has been assessing spotted frog populations since 1999 and has found that there has been a significant decline in population, possibly due to climate changes and subsequent changes in snowpack. And I would like to bring this research done in the Bitterroot National Forest to the north and into the Flathead Valley. And I broke my methodology down into several steps. First, research sites would have to be established, and for the purpose of the research, it would be essential that spotted frogs are there. And past research on frog populations has used tracking of amphibian calls as a measurement of population. So the key would be to train a research team to recognize the spotted frog call, and then use this knowledge to find potential research locations. And the Flathead Valley has a large and diverse range of bodies of water, so there are a lot of opportunities to find and research native spotted frog populations within the valley. And because I would like to apply the results to the research done on Swan Lake water quality, I would specifically look for research sites that are similar to Swan Lake, so smaller lakes or bodies of water that attract boat traffic. Next, I would like to assess the populations of the spotted frogs, and in the Bitterroot National Forest, the spotted frog population is being monitored by egg mass count, and a similar collection in the Flathead would both indicate spotted frog population and would be comparable to data in the Bitterroot. And in order to establish why changes in frog population may be occurring, different variables such as water quality, non-native species, and human development will need to be collected. And water quality will be collected by measuring pH and chlorophyll levels. And in order to make a comparison to research being done on Swan Lake, data collection will occur at 8 different sites within the research sites in the summer and in the fall, as is being done by the research being done by the Swan Lakers currently on Swan Lake. So having those 8 different locations will help in the comparison of data. And the 8 locations within the research sites will be selected based on proximity to developments. Areas that have a lot of human interaction, such as put-ins or private houses, will be potential locations for data collection. In order to randomize the data collection, points 100 feet into the water from these areas will be chosen as research sites and marked with a buoy. And invasive plants such as the curly-leaf pond leaf, as shown in this picture, are already being monitored in the Flathead Valley, as recreational boats are often transferred from one body of water to another within the valley. It's very important to monitor both the plants that are being transferred and how they're being moved. And Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks is already monitoring invasive aquatic species, and because of this, it is possible that data regarding invasive aquatic plants and their effect on the habitats which they're invading may already be available in the research sites which are being used for this data collection. And however, the tracking techniques will be used to assess both the presence and quantity of non-native aquatic plants in the research sites during the summer and fall when data is collected to see if invasive plants are there, and if so, how prevalent are they. And in Swan Lake, the lake trout, which is this fish pictured here, is a non-native species which has been adversely affecting native populations such as the bull trout. But non-native animal populations can adversely affect the populations of the native spotted frog as well. And there is also a growing number of bullfrogs in western Montana, and monitoring their population could also aid in explaining possible decreases in spotted frog population. And the most feasible method of tracking specific non-native populations would be in marking and recapturing, in which animals would be captured, tagged, and then released back into the environment so as to be recognized at a later recapture. And this picture is showing the beach area of my yard, and as you can see, the natural habitat is very grassy, but many of the people who live along the lake will rip this up to leave just the rock, so it looks more like an actual beach. And the main concern in my research is the influence of human development in frog habitat and these effects on the population. And therefore, the data on development will be collected through monitoring human population within 1 mile of the research site. And this is going to be classified by the ownership of the frog habitat, so whether it's privately owned or owned by the government, and then the percentage of the natural habitat remaining within 100 yards of the body of water. And also looking at the number and the type of boats being used on that body of water. And it would be very helpful to include surveys of those who are living within the research sites, as that could help provide a lot more robust data on the use of the habitat. And so surveys could include questions such as, how often do you use a motorboat, and do you take your boat to other locations? And questions such as this could be addressed in a 7-point Likert scale, ranging from 1 is never to 7 is very often, or as yes-no questions with room for people to make comments. And some of the limitations of this research include the scope. It would take a lot of dedication and a lot of time and resources to analyze the interaction between the different variables and make a valley-wide assessment of frog population changes and environmental integrity of the area. Also, there may be other variables which I didn't include in my methodology which could affect frog populations. For example, as shown in these pictures, we always get flooding in the spring, but the amount of flooding varies from year to year, and this could be something that affects population. So there are so many things which could affect the spotted frog populations, and if this research were to be conducted, the methodology section would have to be much more detailed. I would hope that the results of this research would point to possible explanations for potential frog declines within the valley, and that those results could be compared to Swan Lake research so as to hypothesize why the frog population has seemingly disappeared. There's growing research in the western United States about spotted frog population declines and endangerment, so research in the Flathead Valley, which is a rapidly developing area, could potentially be applied on a broader scale. Also, results which would show a decline in frog population could also be applied to further research on anthropometric effects on ecosystems and their functionality. And I did put in my reference section that I used for the project, and the main one that I spoke about, which is the Swan Lake Water Quality Investigation, is this research done here by Kupal, in case anyone wanted to look into that. And please let me know if you have any questions or comments, and thank you for listening.